Now I have the honor to introduce our next speaker, the recently re-elected 56th governor of the state of New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo. Governor Andrew Cuomo has spoken out forcefully against anti-Semitism and racism and all forms of hatred. And we saw it again today, when earlier today the governor directed state police to help investigate swastikas found in the office of a Jewish professor at Columbia University. And we've seen it as he has taken action to keep our communities and our schools safe from bigoted attacks. Governor Cuomo has our back, and we thank you for that. But there is much more that we want to thank you for. Since taking office 8 years ago, Governor Andrew Cuomo has transformed the landscape for all New Yorkers. He passed marriage equality in New York when people thought it would be too difficult to achieve. He is responsible for one of the most comprehensive paid family leave programs in the country. And because of Andrew Cuomo, the New York State legislature finally passed the first $15 minimum wage in the country. Something that many people, even people in this room, didn't believe would be possible. But he did them all, despite having to deal with a state Senate controlled by Republicans to get them accomplished. And he did. All of us in Labor, Governor, have high hopes for your new term, to which you were elected resoundingly. You have been a champion of labor, and in these times especially, we need your strong leadership to stand up to Washington to ensure that workers' rights aren't further watered down or obliterated. Friends, brothers and sisters, please join me in welcoming the 56th governor of the state of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you, brother. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. First, to Stuart Applebaum. He is such a great labor leader. In Italian, we would say he is such a mensch in general. Let's give him a round of applause, Stuart Applebaum. To all of tonight's honorees, to Henry Garrido and DC 37, that just does a fantastic job. To Hyas, and we thank them all for the good work they do in welcoming strangers and welcoming refugees to this country. And we're sorry for what they've gone through and their pain and their hardship. Our heart and prayers are with you. Let's give them a round of applause. And everybody's here tonight. CWA is here, UAW is here, AFL-CIO is here, 1199 is in the house. I saw many of you this morning. We opened the new concourse at LaGuardia today, and it looks beautiful, finally. So I want to thank the building and construction trade unions that worked double overtime to make it happen. We paid for it, but they worked double overtime. So you have all the brothers and sisters here, all the mashpucha together. It's a beautiful thing. And I'll tell you what was a beautiful thing. Seeing the labor movement come together during this election season. Like I have never seen them come together before. And it shows what labor can do when labor stands together. When we put aside our little partisan differences, our little personal differences, and we focus on the goal, it is organized labor that won Democratic seats in the Congress, elected Democrats statewide. That doesn't happen without the people in this room, and I thank you for it. Without the people in this room, I'm not governor of the state of New York, and Mario Cuomo is not governor of the state of New York, and I thank you for that also. A couple of points, and Stuart, as usual, did a magnificent job. You know, today, we see almost on a daily basis such mayhem that every day is a day of chaos. And there's almost a randomness to the series of chaotic events. But underneath the daily chaos, there is a continuum, there is a dynamic that has been set in place in this nation and is continuing to wreak havoc. There was an economic anger that we all know and we all understand. The middle class, the working families had been left behind. And we talked about it for years, but that anger was there and that anger gestated. Donald Trump was running for president. He sensed the anger and he used the anger. Now, I'm a Democrat. Shame on the Democrats for creating that void where the working men and women of this nation felt they had no champion, felt they had no recourse. But Donald Trump filled that void. How he becomes the champion of the working men and women, I still don't understand. I still don't understand. How desperate do you have to be to look at that man and believe he's going to represent the working men and women of this country? But they did. And he was going to be the working man hero. What happens? He gets into office. And two things happen. First, he turns his back on the working men and women of this country. Not only is he not their hero, he's their nightmare. From day one, first thing he does is the tax reform bill, 80% of the tax cut to the richest 1%, and he sticks it to the middle class, and he gives the corporations a 40% tax break. Then he goes after the labor movement, because the labor movement is the strength behind the working men and women. And that's the Janus decision to go after the public employee unions. That's filling the NLRB with his cronies. That's shoring up the private sector employers that are trying to kick out the unions. Against CWA with Verizon, Charter Spectrum against Chris Erickson, private developers in this city against Gary LaBarbera and the Building Trades Union. He supports them because he wants the union movement to go away. Because you are the voice and the power for the working men and women of this country. That's the first thing he does. But the second thing he does is even worse. He gave the anger a target. He directed the anger that people feel. And where did he direct the anger? He directed it to people who are different. You know, the people who are different. Yes, it's the immigrants on the border, because they are the most easy target. They're the most different. But once you start to target people who are different, it starts a momentum and an energy of its own. And now it's no longer just the immigrants. It's people who worship a different God, who have a different religion. It's the Muslims. And we're going to have a travel ban against the Muslims because that's the problem. It's people with a different sexual orientation. And we have to ban transgender people because they're different. It's people with a different skin color. It's people from a different religion. And that starts to feed on itself. And then we get to a point where Stuart is exactly right. We now have taken our greatest strength, which is our diversity, and he has made it a weakness. He's injected a cancer into the American body politic, where one cell attacks another. And you see it with the growth in white supremacist groups, growth in neo-Nazi groups. You see it when they had the demonstration in Charlottesville, the Ku Klux Klan, and the President of the United States says, well, they're good people on both sides of the discussion. No, Mr. President, there are no good white supremacists, and there are no good KKK members. And you see it in the anti-Semitism that our heart still bleeds for the families of the victims of the synagogue in Pittsburgh. But that was the worst, but not the only. We've seen a 50% increase in anti-Semitic attacks in this state. In this state. He has unleashed a poison that you can't control. Once you demonize differences, it starts a negative energy of its own. And it is now ripping across American society. It is totally contrary to who we are. It is contrary to what every philosopher has said, every great leader has said, what every religion says. Martin Luther King will live together as brothers who will perish together as fools. Elie Wiesel, when you hate one group, you will wind up hating everyone. Tikkun Olam, reach out, repair the breach. You can't allow those divisions in society to exist. In Judaism, the concept of tzedakah, charity, but more justice. Catholicism, Monsignor Sullivan would say social justice. It is our obligation to do right one by the other. It's what the country was founded on. Our founding fathers said, e pluribus unum, out of many one. It's the founding fathers' version of saying tikkun olam, repair the breach in mankind. That is what we are about. And he has unleashed a cancer. And our first obligation is that when any of us sees an attack on any of us, we stand with one voice and we oppose the discord and the discrimination and the hate and the anger. It has no place in the state of New York. And the second thing we do is we go back to that original source of anger that he has tapped. And we address it. And we address the working men and women of this country, and we address the injustice that has been done to them. Because they have been wronged. And that's where the labor movement comes in, which built the middle class in the first place and preserved the rights of the middle class. We need to come together and have a stronger labor movement than we have had in generations in this country, because it's the labor movement that's going to protect the working men and women. And we have to raise up the middle class and the working families, not just in rhetoric, not just in speeches, not just in hope, not just in aspiration, but in reality. because what Trump tapped into was an anger because there was not enough progress in their lives. We have to deliver progress. And that's what we're doing in this state. Free college for all families up to $150,000, so you don't have to worry about paying tuition, and every child knows they have a future. The best paid family leave program in the United States of America, so you cannot be victimized by an employer. You have a right to lead your life. The DREAM Act, so our young immigrants have access to higher education and government assistance to get that higher education, so every dreamer knows they're an American and they're going forward. And the greatest single progressive achievement that we have accomplished in my adult life, which is raising the minimum wage from $9 to $15. Now, just think about this. $9 an hour, you earn about $18,000 a year. You go from $18,000 to $30,000. That changes your life. It changes your child's life. It changes your quality of life. And that was accomplished, my friends, by the people in this room, led by SEIU and Mary Kay Henry. Yes, we passed it in this state, but the way things happen, there's a whole body called the legislature, the Assembly and the Senate. Assemblyman David Weprin is here, so I'm going to be careful what I say. And to get something done, the governor can have a nice idea. The governor can have wit and charm, neither of which I have. But you have to get it passed. And if you ever wonder about the power of the labor movement and what labor can do when it comes together and puts its mind to it on a single unified goal, and what great union leadership is all about, it is Mary Kay Henry and SEIU. They focused on the $15 minimum wage. They ran a campaign. They went to the legislators in this state. They helped me get it passed in this state. And then they took that New York triumph and they brought it all across the country and changed life fundamentally for the working men and women in this country, the people who we are here to serve, the people who are on the bottom of the economic ladder, have a better life because of the labor movement. And it happened not over 10 years, not over 20 years. You don't need to read a book. 1 year you were making $18,000 a year. The next year you're making $30,000 a year. Because progressive accomplishments happen from the labor movement and the leadership of one of the labor leaders who will go down in the history books of this nation as one of the greats. I give you Mary Kay Henry. You want to come in here?
Right over here.